First, let me begin by thanking Lead Senator Hassel Thompson and Assemblyman Pretlow for putting together this forum, all the senators who have been in attendance all day, and as well as Senator Stavisky and Assemblywoman Meng for giving me the opportunity to speak. My name is Hellen Kim, and I'm the Community Relations Coordinator at the Korean American Family Service Center. Established in 1989, KFSC is a leading nonprofit organization committed to preventing and ending domestic violence and relationship abuse and creating a violence-free society. I briefly want to touch on the federal VAWA that's sort of allowed me to come here to speak about Senator Stavisky and Assemblywoman Meng's bill. The VAWA that was enacted in 1994 is a historic piece of bipartisan legislation that guarantees equal protection to all victims seeking help under its auspices. It's changed the way our society views domestic violence and sexual assault. Domestic violence is no longer considered a private family matter, but it's instead now recognized in every state as a crime of violence against an intimate partner. The VAWA programs give the law enforcement, courts, prosecutors, the tools they need to hold the offenders accountable and keep communities safe while supporting victims. And since its passing, the reporting of domestic violence has actually increased by 51%. However, this legislation that has been time-tested and supported by courts, prosecutors, law enforcement, and service providers is now at risk of being replaced by another version of the bill in the Congressional House of Representatives. So the version that's been passed in the House of Representatives removes important provisions for vulnerable immigrant communities. Under the current law, the federal VAWA protects the confidentiality of both the identities and statements of all victims and witnesses of domestic violence who report abusers to the police. The bill pending in the House enhances abusers' power over immigrant victims by eliminating this protection for any victim or witness who is in the United States undocumented. Although the New York State Legislature does not have the jurisdiction to set up protections for all the provisions that are being rolled back, it does have the power to defend victims through state and local law enforcement and court systems. Immigrant communities are especially vulnerable to domestic violence because of limited English proficiency, lack of understanding, availability, and access to resources and services, all compounded by immigration status. Abuse based on immigration status can include, but it's not limited to, making false declarations to ICE, claiming fraudulent marriage, failing to recognize a spouse's immigration status, leaving them as undocumented, threatening deportation, withholding or hiding passports or other important documents, transnational abandonment, quote unquote, marry and dump, serial marriages, entrapment, abandonment of foreign brides. The list goes on. Immigrant victims need legal protections to prevent abusers and perpetrators from using immigration status as a tool of abuse, exploitation, and control. Nearly 75% of abused immigrant women in one survey reported that their spouses had never filed immigration applications for them, even though they were eligible for legal status. Abusers who eventually filed for the immigrant spouses waited almost 4 years to do so. The legislation proposed by Stavisky Meng New York State Violence Against Women bill can address these vulnerabilities by taking away the ability of an abuser to manipulate a victim's fears about immigration status. Having legal immigration status is crucial to a victim feeling safe enough to seek help. Victims without legal status can be half as likely as those with stable status to call the police. Statistics show that 1 in 4 women victims of domestic violence in their lifetime are a victim of domestic violence in their lifetime. But the rate of violence is even higher for undocumented women. Victims of violence should never be forced to choose between living with abuse and facing deportation. If someone was being murdered, no officer would ask the victim's immigration status before proceeding to offer assistance. This same rationale applies to domestic violence and its victims. To share a brief story of one of our clients, her name, we'll call her Ms. Pang. She came to the United States a few years ago, trying to find the American dream. She met a Korean man here. They fell in love. He promised to support her, start a small business. She trusted him, went back to China, sold all her belongings, came back, and her world turned to hell. He began to threaten her, beat her physically, abused her emotionally, and took all her money. Under that threat, she just continued to live out of fear without a network, a community of support, limited English abilities. One night, he even threatened to deport her. One night he told her to get out of the house. Terrified, she began to pack her things and leave until his rage exploded. He followed her out into the street where he continued to attack her viciously until a neighbor called the police. She had nowhere to turn. The police luckily were able to give her the number to our organization, and she called. The way the VAWA is protecting these undocumented women, it's a success story. She was able to file an order of protection. She was able to receive work authorization under the VAWA. She entered our transitional housing program, gained economic empowerment. Now she has a small business in Chinatown. She's got an apartment with roommates, and she's really regained her dignity and ability to start her own life. That's the way VAWA is supposed to work. That's the way the confidentiality is supposed to work, so that they don't have any fear of reporting their abuse to the police without any fear or threat of deportation. At our center, we serve a demographic that is 70% foreign-born. We see over 1,800 clients annually. Many of our clients are undocumented, like Ms. Bang. Although we've made many successes, in part, we're able to do what we do because we know that we can confidently assure our clients that they have rights and protections under the law. We can help these women because their immigration status is not a factor in determining their eligibility as a client. We also recognize that most likely their status has been a source of manipulation, fear, and threat, keeping them tethered to an abusive relationship. So up until now, we have had the benefit of the legal system's full protection against domestic violence, but now that is being challenged. Whatever happens in Congress, New York state law can preemptively address provisions that would protect the women who need help. New York has always been at the front of the fight against domestic violence. We are the only state that is an executive level state agency dedicated to this issue. We need to continue to be proactive, and this bill shows that our legislators have the foresight to see the ramifications of rollbacks within the federal VAWA and the impact it would have on our immigrant communities. I urge our senators to pass this legislation that will allow the Korean American Family Service Center, the law enforcement courts, prosecutors, and other service providers the confidence to serve and protect our clients. They do not need to be re-victimized by the system. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.